or the arms of the deity are what protection is sought from. Upendrasya Padav Payat, may the foot of Upendra protect you. Pado Hare Payat, may the foot of Hari protect. Balasya Bhujao Patam, may the arms of Bala protect. This sort of prayer addressed to just one facet or one aspect of a divine presence is not at all uncommon in devotional poetry. Jayadeva, early in the Gita Govinda, wishes that the chest of Madhusudana in the embrace of his beloved fulfills all our desires. Leela Shukla similarly wishes in the Krishna Karnamrita that the glow of the youthful Krishna's form protect us. An observation here is that the benedictions with the Bhasa plays do not have Shringara as a dominant theme. In the verses we saw so far, the consort of Bhagavan does not prominently appear. The verses we'll see next hail her presence. Sridhara is the name and Narasimha is the form in the benediction at the start of the Karnabhara, a Mahabharata-based play. There is no thematic relation to the play itself. It is notable, however, that several of the Bhasa plays refer to a righteous ruler called Rajasimha in the concluding benediction of Bharatavakya, which seeks prosperity for the entire ruler's realm. And this has prompted speculation among scholars regarding the placement of the historical Bhasa during the reign of a ruler with the title Rajasimha, like the Pallava emperor. It bears considering whether the reference to Narasimha here is symbolic of a ruler named Rajasimha presiding over the land's prosperity. I will conclude with the benedictory verse of the play Avimaraka. The play itself is unrelated to the avatars, but the benediction stands out in how many avatars it names. The verse's juxtaposition of Varaha and Narasimha avatars with the primal Narayana may remind us of iconographic and architectural analogues like the Vaikuntha Chaturmurti or Parshva Devatas at a temple Vimana, like at the temple of Jagannatha at Puri. The verse is about the intimate association of the earth, Vasudha, with Narayana across ages and across avatars. And it is fitting as a Bharatavakya for us too, to wish for righteous rule and prosperity of our motherland. Utshiptam sanukampam salila nidhi jalad ekadamshtragra rudham akrantam aji madhye nihata ditisutam ekapadavadhutam sambhuktam pritipurvam swabhuja vashagata ekachakrabhiguptam Shriman Narayanaste pradishyatu vasudham uchhriteta patram. Om Tat Sat.
That was a wonderful paper, interrupted by power cuts frequently. Questions? Any questions? I personally am tempted, because of being a literature person, Bhasa, and Nandi shlokas having Ashir Namaskriya as two modes. These are Ashir mode and Namaskriya, not Namaskriya mode. And tempted to talk about Shesha Sheshi Bhava in the different body parts. It is typical of Sri Vaishnava tradition, but let me not go into that unnecessarily. So yeah.
Namaste. That was a beautiful presentation. I have a specific question regarding the Vyakarana part of the entire Bhasa Nataka Chakra itself. So they say that Bhasa's usage of Bhasha is slightly pre-Paninian. That's what generally a scholarly opinion about Bhasha is. So do you find any Apaniniya prayogas of any words in the Mangala Vachanas that you have seen?
Not to my knowledge. And again,
as I caveated at the beginning of the presentation, there are very prominent voices arguing on several grounds that the Mangalapadyas may have had an origin later than the historical Bhasas as well. So I would be very circumspect in plunging into a literary analysis related to chronology based on them. For the plays themselves, yes, the language used is one of the considerations for different arguments on the placement of Bhasa. But considering this cloud of uncertainty that hangs over the origin of the Mangalapadyas themselves, they might well have been from a period where Paninian usages were being adhered to across the I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it's a very interesting perspective. I think there's a lot of research which can be done if there's sufficient data available. Thank you.
Yeah. Those Paniniya scribing was happening from the dialogue portion of the Bhasa's plays only. None of the references are ever made to the Nandi shlokas. As of them to a later date than the early Bhasa. Okay.
In one of the Bhasa plays, we have the statement Navanataka Sutradhari, referring to Krishna. Do you have any fresh light to be thrown on that particular statement?
The beginning of the presentation is saw from the Uttar Ghatotkacha, where the Sutradhara idea appears. And even there, the connection to the play itself is not very explicit. So I do not know. I do not have anything further to add there.
Probably it refers to some religious significance attached to the production of a drama itself, which we find in later times, as in the Kudiyatam tradition, elaborate religious significance, worship is offered.
The Nataka seen as an instance of yajna, or a Nataka itself being seen as one of the ways in which yajna is manifested or realized, is a theme we come across in the commentarial tradition, but I haven't seen it applied to here. We don't have a long unbroken commentarial tradition like we have with, say, Malinath Surik or Kalidasa, because the long gap before the rediscovery of the place.
You may use a mic if you want, and mic. Yeah. So, are you able to hear him? Last line. Okay. Okay. So that was. That was a wonderful paper. We have now MC Vaijayanti ji, a stotra and a kavya, memories of the invasion and Srirangam's tragic decades. So, of the same place, belonging to the same place.
Okay.
Not that way. Yes. This is the wire here also.
Yes, I will just stand without disturbing the place.
You may put your legs this side.
It's okay. I'm. लक्ष्मीनाथ समारंभां नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्य पर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरु परंपराम् ஆராத அருளமுதம் பொதிந்த கோயில் அம்புயத்தோன் அயோத்தி மன்னர் கழித்த கோயில் தோளாத தனிவீரன் தொழுத கோயில் துணையான வீடனர்க்கு துணையாம் கோயில் சேராத பயனெல்லாம் சேர்க்கும் கோயில் செழுமறையின் முதலெழுத்து சேர்ந்த கோயில் தீராத வினை அனைத்தும் தீர்க்கும் கோயில் திருவரங்கம் எனத் திகழும் கோவில்தானே. நமஸ்கார், வணக்கம். தமிழ்ல முன்னுரை கொடுக்கணும்னு சொல்லியிருக்கார் நாகராஜ் காரு. நான் ஆரம்பிக்கிறதே தமிழ் ஸ்லோகத்துல தான் ஆரம்பிக்கிறேன். இது ஒரு சின்ன ஸ்லோகம், அதிகார சங்கிரகம் பிரபந்தத்துல கிடைச்சிருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரே ஒரு ஸ்லோகம். இந்த ஸ்லோகம் ஸ்ரீரங்க மகாத்மியம், அதனோட தத்துவம் எல்லாத்தையும் சேர்த்து ஒரு சின்ன ஸ்லோகத்துல நமக்கு கொடுத்துருது. அதுல இருந்து தெரியறது இப்படிப்பட்ட ஸ்லோகங்களோட மகத்துவம் நமக்கு முதல்ல தெரியணும்னு. அந்த வழியில நமக்கு கிடைச்சிருக்கிறது தான் அபீதஸ்தவம் எனப்படு ஸ்ரீ நிகமாந்த மகாதேசிகன் எழுதின ஒரு ஸ்தோத்திரம். பயத்தை போக்கக்கூடியதான ஒரு ஸ்தோத்திரம். அது என்ன பயம்? ஸ்ரீரங்கத்துக்கு ஏற்பட்ட அபாயம், முகமது படையெடுப்பினால ஸ்ரீரங்கத்துக்கு ஏற்பட்ட பயம், ஸ்ரீரங்கத்திலிருந்து நம்பெருமானும் பாகவதர்களும் வெளியூருக்கு போக வேண்டிய ஏற்பட்ட சூழ்நிலை, பூஜை புனஸ்காரம் எதுவும் இல்லாம ஸ்ரீரங்கம் ஒரு 40-50 ஆண்டு காலமா இருந்தப்போ பக்தர்கள் அடைந்திருந்த அந்த ஒரு பீதி, அந்த பயம், அந்த பயத்தை போக்கி முன்னாடி பாட்டு அவர் பாடினார், ஆழ்வார் பாசுரம். இச்சுவை தவிர யான் போ இந்திரலோகமாலும் அச்சுவை பெருணும் வேண்டேன் அரங்கமா நகருளானேன் பாடினா. அந்த மாதிரி நித்திசூரிகள் மாதிரி பாகவதாள்லாம் எந்திக்கும் இங்கேயே இருந்து ரங்கநாதனையே சேவிச்சுட்டு இருக்கணும். அந்த மாதிரியான நிலைமை வரத்துக்கு பயத்தை நீக்கி ஸ்ரீரங்கநாதனே அருள் புரியணும்னு அபீதஸ்தவம் பாடியிருக்கார். இந்த ஸ்லோகம் நமக்கு கிடைக்கிறது. அவர் அபீதஸ்தவங்கிற ஸ்லோகம், அந்த ஸ்லோகத்துக்கு, அந்த ஸ்தோத்திரத்துக்கு பலன் அளிக்கிற மாதிரி ஸ்ரீரங்கநாதனே அனுப்பின மாதிரி விஜயநகர சாம்ராஜ்யத்திலிருந்து கம்பனங்கிற ராஜா இங்க வரான். மதுரை வரைக்கும் படையெடுத்துட்டு சுல்தான்களை அழிச்சு மதுரையிலையும் ஸ்ரீரங்கத்திலையும் இங்க ஏற்பட்டிருந்த கூடிய துக்கத்தை எல்லாம் போக்கி அவனுடைய சேனாதிபதியா கோபநாரியன்கிறவன் ஸ்ரீரங்கத்துல நம்பெருமாளை திருப்பி கொண்டு வந்து சேர்த்து விருப்பண்ண உடையார் மூலமா பிற்காலத்துல உற்சவங்கள்லாம் தொடங்கி இன்னி வரைக்கும் இந்த உற்சவங்கள்லாம் சேவிச்சுட்டு இருக்கோம். ஆனா அந்த 14ஆம் நூற்றாண்டுல என்ன நடந்தது அப்படிங்கிற நினைவு இன்னி வரைக்கும் நமக்கு இருக்கான்னா நிறைய பேர்கிட்ட இல்ல. நான் இந்த பேப்பர் எழுதுறதுக்கு முன்னாடி நிறைய பேர்கிட்ட பேசி கேட்டு, இந்த ஸ்தோத்திரம் தெரியுமா, இந்த காவியம் தெரியுமா, இந்த நினைவுகள் இருக்கான்னு கேட்டு அதுக்கப்புறம் கெஸ் பண்ணி மட்டும் பண்ணல, கேட்டு இது நினைவுகள் யார்கிட்டயும் இருக்கிறது இல்லைன்னு. அப்ப பாக்குறப்பதான் என்ன தெரிஞ்சதுன்னா, நம்மளுடைய நினைவுகள் எப்படி ஒரு புத்தகம் நம்மகிட்ட சேராத்தினால, ஒரு மொழி நமக்கு தெரியாதனால எத்தனை விதமான தடைகளை ஏற்படுறது, அந்த தடைகளை நீக்கி பக்தர்களா நாம பண்ண வேண்டியது என்னங்கிறதுக்காக தான் இந்த பேப்பரை பிரசன்ட் பண்றேன். தேங்க்யூ. ஐ வில் ஸ்டார்ட் இன் இங்கிலீஷ். This is a short verse which I recited. This is part of the larger prabandham called Adhikara Sangraham. A poetic form like the shlokas, sutras, this too is a way of telling a story of philosophy in an easy to memorize and recite form. In a simple yet profound way, it introduces us to the greatness of the kshetra and the deity, as well as the importance of it to the devotees. Stotras like these are recited, read and internalized. In Sanatana Dharma tradition, the Shruti as in the heard and Smriti as in the memory form an important part. Srirangam, which hosts the annual festival of recitations, the Adhyayana Utsavam, shows clearly how the text through memorizing and reciting preserved them for a millennia. Recitation at homes, the annual recitation festivals that kept the Nalayira Divya Prabandham close to the devotees. That was also accompanied by a commentary tradition, the transmission of the text as well as connecting it to the theology. A magnificent temple, this abode of Vishnu, which we see in glorious form today, with so many utsavas throughout the year, had to cut short its Panguni Utsavam one day. The impending attack on the town made devotees look for a plan to safeguard the temple and the deity. The Moolasthana was closed and the Utsavamurti was carried out of the town to safety, and the temple remained shut for decades after the invading army massacred the devotees in the town, left it in shambles in the early 14th century. Historians like S. Krishnaswamy Iyengar, K. A. Neelakanta Shastri have all written about the Muhammadan invasions of South India. However, it is literature we turn to as powerful tool in preserving memory, passing on the emotional upheavals of a period, the social conditions. Stotra Abhidastavam, literally a prayer to remove fear of Swami Vedanta Desikan, and Kavya Madhura Vijayam or Veera Kamparaya Charitram by Ganga Devi. As a two texts that I would like to highlight as memories of the dark decade Srirangam endured. Stotras of the genre, we have abundance of stotras. We have Abhidastavam. At a later stage, we also have a Telugu poetry, Venkatesa Vihara Satakamu, which talks about the impending attack on the Tirumala Tirupati by the Golconda Nawabs. So this kind of literature is available in abundance, but the problem is either they are lost or we are lost to the tradition because we don't know the language. Vedantadesikan or Venkatanatha, as he was named, a polymath who lived in 13th, 14th century CE, has left behind a large body of literature spanning many genres, and significant are also his stotra literature. He has sung on his favorite Archamurtis, Kshetras, philosophical explorations, and also on diet restrictions in Tamil, Sanskrit, and also Prakrit and Manipravala. Abhidhistam is one such stotra addressed to Sri Ranganatha. Though as a stotra recited for protection and strength, Sudarshanashtakam is more popular and Abhidhistam has remained a lesser quoted work. If we sang the praises of Vishnu's Chakra and Sudarshanashtakam, performed Prapakti and praised the 8 arms raising to protect the devotees who surrendered in Ashtabhujashtakam, in Abhidhistam the prayer is different. A prayer and a command to Vishnu to pick up his ayudas and to put them to use, to protect the Kshetra, to crush the enemies, to restore Nitya Pujas and normalcy at Srirangam. This is a shloka out of the 29 verses which is quoted very often because this is the only reference which tells you that there was an attack by the Turushkas. There is a Turushka mentioned in this shloka, like the Kali's battalions, like others, the Turushkas and Evanas have also spread fear among people. So he says, your panchayatas are very powerful. Use your panchayatas to crush the enemies and protect Srirangam. There are 2 different attacks that are mentioned as being the ones that impacted Srirangam temple, put together from traditional sources, travelers' diaries, and other records. The flight of the deity is more clearer perhaps as the result of the second attack, and the return is attested through an epigraphic record which is found dated to 1371. The 2 Muhammadan invasions, the first one by Malikafur around 1310 to 11 CE in south, and later attack by Ulugh Khan around 1323 CE, which is clearly remembered as the deadliest one from the traditional sources. When a few more verses are read together with the one which I had quoted above, the one which you saw earlier, I have quoted a few more verses in translation here for simplicity's sake. What circumstances would have forced a scholar who one would presume by his work and his life to be a pacifist to talk about using force, using weapons to destroy the enemy? Whatever force that was required to save the shrine of Sri Ranganatha, to see the return of the deity, and a prayer for restoration of normalcy at all Vishnu shrines. Verses 20 to 27 are more focused on the fear about protection of Srirangam and the explicit prayer. Verse 20 is a prayer for uprooting enemies of the devotees of Srirangam who seek nothing but praying to Archa, destroying them fully, the enemies fully, and establishing Sriranga Shri so that they continue to enjoy the worship of Sri Ranganatha and live like the Nityasuris, like how Nityasuris live in Sri Vaikuntham, the Bhaktas would live in Srirangam worshipping Sri Ranganatha. I will skip some of the verses and I will go to like how I got introduced to Abhidhistavam. Why am I talking about a language distancing a text? It is not just a personal experience, it's the experience of many in Tamil Nadu. We don't study Sanskrit. My family itself, my mother's side, my grandfather was the last one who studied Sanskrit formally. And in my father's side, my father was the last person. There is a language policy which removes Sanskrit from curriculum. Even CBSE is forced not to teach Sanskrit in schools. So that is the kind of language policy we are seeing. And I got introduced to Abhidhistavam as a memory from the devotees at Satyagalam. This is a temple at Satyagalam, which is near Sivasamudram in Karnataka district, where Vedantadesikan, after leaving Srirangam, spent many years. When I went there, the devotees there gave me a copy of Abhidhistavam and they told me, Vedantadesikan composed Abhidhistavam while he was living here. And they showed this Utsava Murti and the Murti of Swami Desikan there to say, like, he is seen in seated posture everywhere, you can see. His Vigraha Murti is in seated posture everywhere. At Satyagalam, he is there in a standing posture. He is forever alert, waiting for news from Srirangam to get back. So he was living there with that intense desire to come back to see Sriranganatha back in Srirangam. So it was at Satyagalam that the memory of Abhidhistavam as a stotra that linked one to the memories of what happened to Srirangam came to me, not from whatever I could learn from here, not from the tradition that we got to know. In fact, there is an interesting commentary which mentions how elders looked at texts and which we fail to imbibe. There is a commentary by Veeraraghavacharya to an edition which has both Sri Stuti and Abhidastavam. He says, Sri Stutinal namakku shemam, Abhidastavathinal periya perumalukku shemam vaitadu. Sri Stuti confers prosperity on us. Abhidastavam gave Ranganatha the comfort. An intimate observation on other intimate devotees' appeal that has come down to us over hundreds of years and still remains in the memory of few devotees. Okay. The language problem I talked about too, I just have made only two mentions here. One is about the Dravidian ideology which kept the language out of curriculum and also wanted to remove certain literature out of school textbooks. Lot of religious literature that has come down as the medieval literature, so-called. The Sangam was acceptable, but the medieval literature, which was like religious literature, the Devaram, Tiruvasakam, Divya Prabandham, and Kambaramayanam, and all of them, they were not very acceptable. That comes from a certain ideology. And why do I look at it as a hurdle? Because if I am going to look at the school, Mr. Nair, when he spoke about the constitutional remedy, when he spoke about the Pancharatra Agama. Here I do not have a constitutional remedy. It is like an individual finally who has to take the efforts to keep this memory and these texts alive, because there doesn't seem to be any other recourse within the system here to remember these. Okay, now I will move to the Kavya part since we are running out of time. This is a unique kavya, like how Abhidastavam was a unique sloka. This was a kavya, one of the very few written by women authors. And this was written by none other than the wife of Kampana, who conducted the expedition down south to defeat the forces here. And Ganga Devi had written this verse in praise of her, honor of her husband, his powers, how he defeated, how he fought, what happened. I didn't realize the importance of these two texts as eyewitness accounts till my professor used the term, oh, which century these authors belong to, she asked me. I said the date of Vaishnavism, I gave the date of Ganga Devi. She said, oh, they were Pratyaksha Darsha Sakshis. Till she used the term, I didn't think of them as eyewitnesses. We don't think of them as eyewitness accounts because they are not history. One is a stotra, the other is a mahakavya. These as genres do not appeal to us as history. But putting pieces together, I look at the stotra, I look at the kavya, and finally I see the 1371 epigraphic record. I can connect to the stories and the memories of Srirangam. I'll give a few glimpses of what Ganga Devi talks about the condition of Srirangam and condition of Mathura when she talks about the horrible conditions of the place when Kampana came on the expedition here. You can see in Srirangam, the Lord of Serpents is seen warding off tumbling debris of brick with his hood lest they fall and disturb sleep of yoga. That was the condition. She said, like, the temple doors have been eaten away by termites, where the sounds of mridangam used to be heard. Now it is only screeching sounds of owls that are heard. She says it's not only that, the parrots are speaking the language of Persian. They are not speaking the local language. So that is the extent to which the influence has been there. So that is the kind of gory depiction Ganga Devi gives, and that actually makes this text unacceptable to a lot of people who think like she could not have written it. The language is a hurdle in Abhidastavam. How a text is considered either as a literature or a literary evidence, that is a problem. I'll go directly to the problem now. There is this book, Textures of Time, written by Rao Shulman and Velcheru Narayan Rao, David Shulman and Sanjay Subramaniam. They quote a lot of traditional accounts, Bakars, Kaifiyat, Karnam literature and all that to say like how they give us history. And in the conclusion, they have a chapter called Madura Vijayam and Pseudo History. How do they come to the conclusion that Madura Vijayam is a pseudo history? There is one quote which I have given here. I'll read it out. Ganga Devi was Kampana's courtesan. There is no reason to expect her to have produced a historical monograph as a birthday present for her royal lover. What we have naturally enough is more like a long birthday card. Ganga Devi celebrates at considerable length and with a certain charm her lover's physical beauty, erotic talents, and athletic interests. She seems to know a good deal about all three domains, which somewhat surprisingly fuse in the military mission to Madurai. I have referred to 3 editions of Madura Vijayam. The first one published by the Trivandrum with the introduction by T.A. Gopinath Rao, then Trivenkatachary's, and latest one by Sujata Reddy. All of them mention Ganga Devi as the wife, the favorite wife of Kampana and all that. But Shulman Rao and Subramaniam dismiss her as a courtesan. It is not that courtesan is a word of disrespect, but they pick up and use this word courtesan to outright dismiss a text as being pseudo. So this shows us like whether the text will get passed on to us as evidence by the so-called people who set the syllabus and prescribe us textbooks. That is why I want to think of how we approach a stotra and a kavya which was praised as a mahakavya by the Sanskrit scholars, but historians, some of them, seem to dismiss it. As I said, I do not seem to have any other answers except for individuals, families to protect these texts and pass on the memories of it to their families and to this thing, the Sampradaya. Professor Meenakshi Jain has written about flight of deities. In Srirangam, we had flight of deity. Nambaramal went away. He was taken away on one side by Pillilokacharya. On the other side, Vedantadesikan went with the text of Shruta Prakasika. The Sampradaya showed that the text, deity, both being crucial and to be saved. That the memory that they fought, they protect to save the text and the tradition. I think that the memory has to be kept alive. Salman Rushdie says fiction is a powerful tool. The fiction which distorts also can be a powerful tool. But why not our traditional kavyas and natakas and stotras as a tool that pass on the memory to us and how we protect and preserve them? That is my humble submission. Thank you so much.
That was a wonderful paper and a lively presentation, highly interactive with the audience. And Vaijayanti ji, let me tell you, don't worry, you call them historians, none of them is a historian. Velcheru Narayana Rao is a leftist literature scholar, he is a Marxist. So you cannot expect anything more from him. David Shulman is in the crime in association with him, though he is by himself he is not into that. And Sanjay Subramaniam, we know, the gang, it's a gang of people. So let's not worry about them, that's what is expected of them, to call our historical kavyas as pseudo-history. That's a very heavy word to use for historical kavyas. And how can they use such heavy words? Criminal can use a heavy weapon. They are criminals. They use. So don't worry about it. At the most, you can say there are legendary elements in kavyas because they are kavyas. But your word eyewitness accounts is very, very apt to all the historical kavyas of that period. And particularly because we are sitting here in Srirangam, and these two, the choice of the stotra and kavya was very, very apt. I'm sorry if I have used too strong words for those scholars, but if they can use words like pseudo, I can also use those words. Hitangi Brahmabhaji, examining the aspect of Samarpan in the selected illustrated Sursagar manuscripts.
શ્રી કૃષ્ણાય નમઃ. આજે મને ઇન્ડિકાએ જે અવસર આપ્યો છે એના માટે હું ખૂબ આભારી છું અને આપ સૌના સમક્ષ હું આજે જે પેપર પ્રસ્તુત કરવા જઈ રહી છું એ સમર્પણ ભાવના ઉપર છે જે સૂરસાગરમાં પણ દર્શાય છે અને પુષ્ટિ માર્ગમાં પણ દર્શાય છે. I am grateful to INDICA for this opportunity. And I would be making you travel north with me to the Vaishnavism observed in the land of Krishna himself, Braj, after all the South Indian Vaishnavism that we have been listening to since morning. Surdas was one of the prominent poets of the Sagun Bhakti during the 15th-16th centuries, composed and sang verses in Braj Bhasha dedicated to Lord Krishna, which have since then been accepted and sung by the various Vaishnava sects of North India. The verses composed by him have been compiled and known as Sursagar. Surdas has been considered as the pioneer poet among the Ashtchap or the 8 prominent poets of Pushti Marg, and his verses have been recited by the sectarian authorities and devotees before the various Swarups of Krishna, whom they fondly refer to with the title of Thakurji or their Lord. However, the American religious studies scholar John Stratton Hawley is of the opinion that the Pushti Marg sect used Surdas verses in its devotional life by giving him a formal place through initiation in the sect as one of the disciples of Sri Vallabhacharya, the founder of the Pushti Marg sect. This paper begins by stating the views shared by Hawley, he's been considered as an expert on Sursagar manuscripts, setting the grounds for an analysis of a certain aspect, namely Samarpan or surrender, found across the manuscripts of Sursagar. Through a textual and visual analysis, but it's off. Okay. So, through a textual and visual analysis of selected illustrated Sursagar manuscripts from the 17th century Mewat school of painting in Rajasthan, the paper proceeds to unravel Samarpan as observed in its various forms. While Jack Hawley and Kenneth Bryant have extensively worked on compiling and translating the verses of Surdas and situating him within the larger corpus of the Bhakti movement, Rita Soda in the past has explored the visual aspects of the illustrated Sursagar manuscripts majorly from Mewar through an art historical approach. So although my present paper is informed by both the literary and art historical approaches, I am not inherently using either of them for the analysis here. Surdas was a poet, saint and singer who composed verses in Braj Bhasha in the form of Pad, devoted to Sri Krishna. His contribution through these verses has been significant to the spread of the medieval period Bhakti movement in North India. He was considered to be blind, and there have been many contrasting reasons for when and how he turned blind. The tradition which he inherited was largely an oral one. So whatever we find in Sursagar is basically what he spelled out, what he sang, and there are no written evidence records for with dating for it, because people wrote whatever they heard him sing. So when they were unable to write what they heard, that time memory served them. So there are many discrepancies also between what was originally Surdas' verse and what people heard. Sursagar is therefore not a linear text, nor a continuous narrative, but it's a collection of individual verses which, although devoted to Krishna, are not organized in a particular manner. Now, Sursagar is actually made by, many other verses by lesser known poets also, and therefore giving it the dimension of Sursagar or oceanic dimensions. Now, there have been several hagiographical details available for Surdas, including the 84 Vaishnava ki Varta, which is a collection of 84 stories in Braj Bhasha of the chief Vaishnava disciple of Vallabhacharya, the founder of Pushti Marg or Vallabh Sampradaya. And these stories are not mere legends, but they are considered to be true accounts of actual persons and realized episodes. So, Gokulnathji, the grandson of Vallabhacharya, is credited for gathering the Varta, while Hari Raiji, the great-grandson of Vithalnathji, who was the second son of Vallabhacharya, organized the Varta to their present form. Now, among the prominent figures in this Varta are the Ashtcha Kavi, or the 8 important poets, as I already mentioned. So, 4 of them, including Surdas, were placed within the 84 Vaishnava ki Varta and are considered to be the disciples of Vallabhacharya, while the other 4 are placed under the Vasubhavan Vaishnava ki Varta and are considered to be the disciples of Vithalnathji. Now, Hawley is of the opinion that this Ashtcha edifice represents a major distortion of history, and that in each case it seems to have taken quite some maneuvering to make them into Vallabhites. I quote him here, "This effort to rewrite history is important not only because it throws a particular spin on the question of how a bhakti movement comes into being. If bhakti is a vernacular groundswell whose major medium is poetry, especially poetry of the sort that would typically be sung, then this effort to constrain it within sectarian channels, take a poet's agency and transfer it to his supposed guru, does a fundamental disservice to the contagious reality of bhakti itself. It harnesses the energy of song for theological and institutional purposes that are foreign to its inner spirit." He further clarifies that in 1640, Surdas' verses were already called an ocean, Sursagar, but that there was nothing specifically Vallabhite about it. Now, before I attempt to provide a few answers to the claims made by Jack Hawley, let us begin by having a basic understanding of the Pushti Marg Sampradaya. Pushti Marg, or as translated literally, as Maitriji also said in the morning, is the grace, the marg, the path of grace. It is also synonymous to Vallabh Sampradaya since he was the founder. Now, it is believed that at the midnight on the 11th day of the Shravan Shukla Paksh Ekadashi in the year 1494 AD, Shri Krishna appeared before Vallabhacharya and revealed to him directly the means by which the Jeev might be cleansed of their faults, which is reverberated in the Siddhanta Rahasyam composed by Vallabhacharya. The philosophical system prevalent in Pushti Marg is Shuddha-Advait, or pure non-duality. And and Krishna is supposed to be Sagun, possessed of qualities. Damodar Das Harsani was the first disciple of Vallabhacharya, initiated into the sect through a rite of passage or mantra diksha through Brahm Sambandh, which is a necessary step towards the seva of the Swarup of Krishna. Now, what is interesting to note is that the seva established by Vallabhacharya is that of the image of Krishna, who is treated as the divine cowherd of Braj throughout the day from morning to evening and throughout the year through all the festivals. So, it is performative, and there are performative practices observed within the sect. So, Rag, Bhog and Shringar are extremely crucial to Pushti Marg. Now, the tenets of Pushti Marg are Ashray, Samarpan and Sharanagati, or shelter, surrendering oneself and seeking refuge in the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, which eventually give way to the ritualistic practice of performing seva. The Diksha mantra through Brahma Samban that one recites during the time of initiation is that of surrendering oneself along with one's wealth, possessions, and family to Lord Krishna, which comes with the realization that each jeev is an ansh or a part of Sri Krishna. So whatever is his or hers invariably belongs to Krishna. This aspect of surrender is certainly inspired by the Gita. And we also heard Dr. Ravi Narayan ji, even Dr. Vijoya ji talk about Samarpan Bhavna. But I would like to demonstrate how it is seen in Pushti Marg, not only through the written treatises, but also through Seva. So, in the Siddhant Rahasyam, written by Vallabhacharya ji, he gives the Samarpan Updesh to the initiated Bhakta who has performed Atma Nivedanam, or self-submission to Sri Krishna, asking the devotees to dedicate everything that they do and consume to Sri Krishna. Therefore, Nivediti Samarpya Sarvam Kurya Diti Sthiti. Tasmat Nato Sarva Karya Sarva Vastu Samarpanam. So whatever you do, whatever activities you participate into, Krishna asks the devotee to dedicate everything to him. Furthermore, the treatise composed by Sri Hari Rai ji, titled Shiksha Patram, which is a doctrinal treatise, Vallabhacharya preaches to the devotee saying, Ataha Sharna Matram hi kartavyam akhilam tataha yaduktam tat charani riti vakya bhavishyati. So, which means that, and he further also gives the Ashtakshar Diksha of Sri Krishna Sharanam Mama to the devotee to recite. So, he states that satsang, that is good or right company, Sri Krishna's smaran or remembrance, and Sharanagati, seeking his shelter, are what the devotees must use their minds for, and everything else besides that would be futile. Now I would like to turn to the paintings. So there are three particular manuscripts that I am considering here, which are the first set of Mewar Sursagar paintings, commissioned by Rana Jagat Singh of Mewar, and around the time period of 1628 to 1652 AD. Now this particular one is the Vrindavan Vihar, and is usually sung in Ragdev Gandhar. The implication of this verse is that Radha is sleeping, as we see her sleeping, and she dreams, and she suddenly is adorned, that she's dreaming in her dream, she's suddenly adorned by 7 moons. So the sleeping Radhika wakes up startled, wondering what were those fragmented pieces that fell upon her chest, and therefore Urpa Shobhat hai Sasi Saat. She narrates her dream to her friend. Perhaps it was the guise of Shiv. I just got started, sir. So she narrates her dream to her friend that perhaps it was the guise of Shiv that the moon had adorned, which scattered and fell in fragments and pierced her through the arrows of passion. Surdas exclaims, addressing Krishna, who beside you, Sham, can save the earth under such morbid circumstances. So we see Radha in this stop motion animation kind of movement, where she wakes up startled and she is narrating her dream to one Sakhi, while the other Sakhi goes to Krishna reporting him about this unusual event in Radha's life, getting scared of her getting startled, seeing her friend getting startled. And of course we see the visual metaphors of Shiv and Kamdev. So interestingly, this is actually a Shringaric verse bringing Krishna and Radha together. However, the other implication over here is that of Samarpan. And the Samarpan of who? But the Gopi. So it is important to note that Surdas changes his voice and utters the verses in another person's voice. So here it's the Gopi. And what is interesting about this verse is Also the fact that Surdas is addressed as Prabhu. Okay, Surdas addresses Krishna as Prabhu, but the Gopi addresses Krishna as Shyam. So Krishna is the Samarpan Bhav over here of the Gopi is of Madhurya Ras. It evokes Madhurya Ras, and in no way is Krishna deified here. She does not approach Krishna as the Lord or the avatar of Vishnu, but she approaches him as her friend, her confidant, and the beloved of her and Radha. The second painting that I am considering here is the Govardhan Dharan Leela of Krishna. So Braj is surrounded by an overcast of dark grey clouds, and the Gopi bespeaks everyone else's mind by seeking Krishna's refuge. So describing the dreadful atmosphere, she says that 96 crore clouds have overcast their shadow upon Braj, and the fierce downpour is inevitably taking place in all four cardinal directions, making it seem as if the day has turned into night. And upon learning this, the son of Yashoda, Krishna, embraces the mountain as we see him uplifting the mountain right from the bottom. And eventually Surdas says that in his signatory chap, that nothing, not even a single drop of rain touched us, because Krishna had embraced, he had held the mountain, and we were all embraced under his bhuja, under his arms. So notably, Krishna is again not being addressed as Prabhu or Thakur or Paramatma, but as Shyam by the Gopi. And he is considered as the cowherd who has enticed everyone and shown miracles to the people of Braj, someone whom they can count upon, someone whom they love immensely, but again have not yet deified him in any way, nor worship, yet surrendered themselves to him. So this certainly shows the Samarpan Bhav, not just of a single Gopi, but of all the people of Braj who look upon Krishna as their savior. And this, again, Krishna is not deified. The last painting is that of Vinay Padavali by Surdas ji again. This is a little complicated verse which has a lot of similes, but basically Surdas makes an appeal to his Lord Krishna, asking that why don't you eradicate misery from the lives of those who suffer, just as by catching the glimpse of the greens glistening like gold during the onset of the Ashad month when there is rain. Monkeys grab away, so basically monkeys and parrots and monkeys and parrots, they peck away all the waste, and then the farmer sees the good productive produce and feels happy. And just the way the crane, Kil meen tan chahat aisa raho Prabhu katat. So the way the crane tries to cut the fish, the same way Prabhu, please cut our sorrows, is Surdas' appeal to Shyam. Now pictorially we observe all these similes here, but what is important to notice is that, 5 minutes, please, 5 minutes. Okay, this is the last one. So Surdas is rendered twice here. Okay, so we see him rendered twice, appealing to Krishna. One is his own voice, and another is the voice of again him, but as Das Bhav. And interestingly, Krishna is observed here in his nascent Vishnu form with the Chaturbhuj and Ayodh held in each arm, seated on a lotus asana, which again reinforces the Dasya Bhav of this verse. So here Krishna is certainly deified, and the Samarpan Bhav evoked here is that of a Das or a Sevak to his Lord. Concluding my paper, I shall turn to addressing some of Hawley's claims. Now the first being that of Surdas being deliberately incorporated into the Pushtimarg sect through the written evidence as observed in the Varka. I would only like to state that Surdas holds an important place within Pushtimarg sect and outside of it. Even if he was, as Hawley argues, incorporated into the Sampradaya, his composed verses have never remained confined to one particular sect, but have rather been shared among the various Vaishnava Sampradayas in Braj, owing to a commonly shared sentiment of love towards Radha and Krishna, whether in their duality or non-duality. He further set certain unrealistic expectations, I quote him, and even within the Vallabhite community, people hold him, that is Surdas, in special esteem. He is not the guru of course, that role is reserved for Vallabh. And he further states, nevertheless, the Varta does not leave its reader with the sense that Sur's devoted service to God is on a higher plane than what the rest of the well-structured Vallabhite community and its leaders perform. Now, this clearly demonstrates Hawley's inability to understand that Vallabhacharya was the founder and propounded Pushti Marg, and no matter what seat of prominence Surdas received in Pushti Marg, a comparison between the famed poet and the founder is but an unreasonable one. As we observe through the few examples of the illustrated Sursagar manuscripts, the aspect of Samarpan is felt by each character differently, but it certainly and strongly resonates with Vallabhacharya's tenets of Pushti Marg that are not only reflected theoretically through his written treatises, but also manifested into practice through the manner in which Pushti Seva is performed. Therefore, the question of taking a poet's agency and transferring it to his supposed guru does not arise here at all, nor is the energy of song foreign to its inner spirit. Hawley has time and again commented upon how Surdas Vinay Pad do not find a place in Pushti Marg, but contrary to this belief, Vinay Pad does find a place as Vinti ke Pad, Ashray ke Pad and Mahatmya ke Pad in the Shayan Darshan before Thakurji in the Pushti Marg Havelis. These verses particularly are reflective of the aspect of Samarpan of a Das towards his Prabhu, as we observed in the last illustrated manuscript. If we observe Sursagar verses closely, we realize that Surdas, I'm done, sir. We realize that Surdas does don several voices of the characters central to Krishna's life, whether they be that of Radha, Nand, Yashoda, Balram, Sakha, Gop, Gopi, but the verse eventually ends with the characteristic chap of Surdas as in his own voice, as a sevak or das. And this is the same case when a Pushti Margi devotee performs his or her Thakurji's seva, as he or she dons several roles and experiences various sentiments as that of a mother, a friend, a confidant, or a lover throughout the year by partaking in the festivals as well as the day-to-day rituals and thereby being a part of his Leela while continuing to remain a devotee at heart. The Sai Bhav is that of a sevak or das. Underneath all those personifications, akin to Surdas, surrendering oneself in all humility to Lord Krishna. And therefore, I would like to end by saying, Dasoham Krishna Tavasmi. Thank you.
It was really very interesting literature paper. Not just literature, it was a manuscript research also. Questions? We have one more paper before tea break by our historian Sri Raviranjan Senji. So shall we break for tea? Yeah, let us break for tea. After tea, let us have Sri Raviranjan Senji.
Yeah, because I will be keeping this. নমস্কার সকলকে বাংলায় বা বঙ্গদেশে শ্রীরাম এবং রামায়ণ পরম্পরা এই বিষয়ে উপস্থাপনা করব কিছু নির্দিষ্ট বিষয় কিছু কিছু বিন্দু এই উপস্থাপনার মধ্যে আপনাদের সামনে রাখার চেষ্টা করব I will try to keep some points regarding the Ramayana tradition in Bengal and Sri Rama tradition in Bengal in this presentation. In the context of some recent political discourses and then which have also culminated into some academic and scholarly discourses on the presence of the Sri Rama tradition in Bengal in the last few years, because we have seen some polemics on that and the extent in which Sri Rama is present in Bengal or not present, and whether he is a marginalized presence in Bengal. So these have become contentious issues. In that context, I will try to examine to some extent, bringing out some examples from the Krittivasa Ramayana, to what extent is he present within the Vaishnava tradition in Bengal, and to what extent is it not a dominant force in Bengal. When we speak of Vaishnavism in all over India, we know that the regional versions of the Ramayana, whether in Bangla, Oriya, Telugu, or the Kambar Ramayana over here, they have all shaped the Vaishnava tradition which we know today. And the Vaishnava tradition, the Vaishnava religiosity today has been shaped by all these versions, mostly Tulsidasa's version in North India, which has completely reshaped the religious landscape of North India, we can say. So when we examine the Krittivasa Ramayana, which was composed in the 15th century, though there are some controversies about his dates, but I won't go into that. I will take it as the 15th century, which most of the scholars agree to. We see that he had transcreated the Ramayana in the Bangla language. For the first time, the complete Ramayana was there in the Bangla language. After Krittivasa, there have been other attempts at transcreation and translation also in the 18th century, 19th, 20th. We have various other versions. But it is mostly the Krittivasa Ramayana which has become synonymous with Ramayana in Bengal. Now, also when we speak of Vaishnavism in Bengal, it is considered to be synonymous with the Gauriya Vaishnava Sampradaya, where the focus is on Sri Krishna along with Radha. But however, even though this is the dominant tradition, even within the Gauriya Vaishnava, Sri Rama is present, as we know in the Mahamantra, both are mentioned equally. Apart from that, in the literature, sculpture, folk, cultural arts, sacred sites, and in the cultural life of Bengal, the Sri Rama tradition and the Ramayana tradition is present, both within the Gauriya Vaishnava as well as in its own right, and sometimes also as a part of the Ramanandi tradition, which also had a presence in Bengal, mostly from the 1700s to the 1900s. That period, the Ramanandi tradition was also an expanding tradition in Bengal due to the sons who used to come in from northern India at that time. Now, if we go back to Krittivasa, who is a very important figure because he is synonymous with the Ramayana in Bengal, he had taken his sources both from the Valmiki Ramayana as well as from many other Puranas, Upa-Puranas, some of which were composed in eastern India during the Pala and Sena reigns, and also from various other folk traditions of the Ramayana. So there are many incidents in the Krittivas Ramayana which are specific to the Krittivas Ramayana, maybe also present in some other regional versions, but which are not there in the Valmiki Ramayana. Now, regarding the existing literature, there are some literary studies on the Krittivasa Ramayana, also on some of the differences with the Valmiki Ramayana, but what I have tried to do in this paper is to link the incidents in the Krittivasa Ramayana which are unique there to some of the geographical locations in Bengal, to see the way in which the Krittivasa Ramayana has also influenced the geospatial cultural heritage of this region. And the name of his book, the official name is Sri Ram Panchali, and it's generally placed in the 15th century, and it was a transcreation where he had placed the Ramayana in a Bengali cultural setting. His characterization of Sri Rama, Devi Sita and others are so close to the Bengali ethos that they have become folk heroes of the region and are part of the cultural life of the common people. In many ways, his Ram Panchali was an original composition where he has incorporated many incidents from many diverse sources and made all these incidents part of the Ramayana corpus for the people of Bengal. Now, firstly, something which is very well known, I will start with that, and then I will go to some other incidents which are not very well known. Most of us know about the Akal Bodhan, which is the Durga Puja of today, which is the most important festival of Bengal and also of Bengalis anywhere around the globe. So that is celebrated in the autumn season, the Sarad Ritu. But that was not the original Durga Puja, which was held in the month of Chaitra, which was the Basanti Puja. So the story is that Sri Ram, while engaged in the war in Lanka, he was advised by Lord Brahma to do Durga Puja. And on being advised by Brahma, he did Chandipat, and then he himself shaped the earthen image of Durga and did Bodhan on Shashti evening. Now, Krittivas mentions all these in details. These are not there in the Valmiki Ramayana. This entire incident is not there at all in the Valmiki Ramayana, and the season of the war is also not the Sarad Ritu in the Valmiki Ramayana. Krittivas mentions the pujas done on Saptami and Ashtami by